could happen to anybody. It could happen to anybody. And it's just hard.
Homeless in the Bay Area.
A lot of people are one incident, one accident, one job loss away from the exact same situation.
Tens of thousands of people living on the streets.
Somebody comes every day.
New person.
Every day.
Families staying in cars, in shelters, struggling to get their children to school.
There's a mixture of looks you get, but a lot of it is people just look disgusted.
Those who served our country, living in a tent on concrete sidewalks.
It's bad. Because they come by, like I said, at 2:30 this morning. Get up. And if you don't get up, we got calling the police.
And now, a new face of homelessness. Victims of the Bay Area housing crisis borrowing cars or sleeping on a couch.
Be sleeping under a bridge or on a field or on a sidewalk somewhere.
Is there a solution?
What we are doing now is clearly not working.
Lawmakers, cities, counties struggling to find answers.
Homeless residents are in our city, and we can either choose to leave them outside in our parks, streets, or in our creeks, or we can house them.
The widespread issue in our faces.
We're trying to be compassionate and measured.
I want to help homeless people, but not this way. Put them at the fairgrounds, put them anywhere.
Politicians, business leaders, and residents of the Bay Area agree.
Something needs to be done to help the homeless. The Bay Area has a population of over 7 million people, and unfortunately, thousands of them are living on the streets.
While that may seem like a small percentage of people living here, the fact is they're human beings in need of a hand up. Good evening, I'm Julie Hayner.
And I'm Frank Somerville. We're talking here about everyday people who are now living in tents or in a car or on the street. And there are lots of reasons why they ended up there. Sometimes it's the loss of the job, or a medical issue, or a drug problem, or trouble with the law.
Many people say even with a steady job and a roof over their head and living paycheck to paycheck, one misstep away from the same fate.
So tonight what we're going to do is try to shed a little light on the issue and hopefully open up a dialogue that'll lead to possible solutions. Recently, I spent some time just down the road from our station here in Oakland at a tent city underneath a freeway. You've probably noticed these tent cities. They're literally popping up all over the Bay Area. And we wanted to find out who are the people who are living there and what are their lives like. I spoke with two of them. They talked about the huge rats they deal with, the noise, how they go to the bathroom, and when was the last time they were actually able to take a real shower. You've got my living quarters. Do you mind if I ask what is it like being out here?
It can be kind of violent, maybe at times when disagreements happen with people from different walks of life who may not be as diplomatic as you. Some of us have wives and children that we miss. It's never boring. It's never boring. If you're bored, I don't know what to tell you. I'm never bored. Normally I cook. We got stoves, grills. You know, I mean, there's a lot of innovation out here, man.
Let's say you do have to go to the bathroom. Where do you go?
I keep a bucket with maybe some bleach in it and a septic cleaner. I don't know if that works, but I figure between septic tanks, so it has to work. So, you know, I may pour a bottle of Febreze in it, you know, but keep a bucket though, keep it covered with bleach and stuff in there to kill it, you know, to kill the smell. Some people piss in the dirt. I don't agree with that. And the rats, you wouldn't believe how these rats, man, actually move. You come back and your whole thing is rearranged. And you may blame it on your neighbor saying he did it, the rats did it.
There are people who say, look, I get that they're homeless, but you know what? I don't want to walk by needles. I don't want to walk by all of this garbage. I don't want them in my neighborhood. What would you say to those people?
First and foremost, it could happen to you because a lot of us come from the same situations that you people live in. I lost my home in the 2008, the whole housing crash thing, but it can happen to you, man. I wouldn't be so quick to be so judgmental, man, and jump to conclusions about people.
What do you want people to know about you?
that I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim, and I'm not a victim. I don't like that. You know, I mean, we're all struggling, man, and I believe that we're all in the same water, but we're not in the same boat.
It's just hard not to get emotional when you see this, just thinking about this is where they live. This is what they have. And there's so many people who are just a couple of paychecks away from potentially being here. And it's so easy to drive by them and not think anything. And, you know, we're all human beings. It's just, you know what it is? It's really sobering. It's really sobering to think that someone lives in a tent like that. And that's all they have. When you say you can't deal with Caltrans people, what do you mean by that? Because they kick you out?
Not just that. They deliberately target your belongings, and they don't come to clean up. They come to get our stuff and take everything we own. They hope that if they take everything we own, we'll leave. Well, the majority of us, we've got nowhere else to go. Oakland's my home. I've been here for 35 years. I haven't been homeless the whole time. I was a taxpayer, I was a homeowner, I was a business owner. You know, I ran a business with my father for 19 years, right downtown. It's hard, it's rough, and I'm a mechanic, and living out here on the streets, all my stuff is subject to being stolen. And anytime I leave my camp, it's an open game. That's why I put up the little fence that I scrounged up. I scrounged up some pallets and put it together. And it's just a deterrent. If they really wanted something that was in here, all they have to do is jump over.
Let me just ask you point blank. When was the last time you took a shower? When was the last time you were able to take a shower?
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
3 weeks. No shower facilities available to us. There are, but they're nasty, or you get your stuff stolen. One of the hard things to do out here is stay clean. We have no bathroom facilities. We have no running water. We have to get water from faucets and then cart it back to our camps. That's what the 5-gallon buckets. And then we try to wash up as much as we can.
One of the things that I notice as I'm talking to you is how noisy it is. You've got BART going by, you've got trucks going by. How do you deal with that?
I try not to pay attention to it, but it's hard. It's been hard on me, mentally, psychologically, physically, because living under the overpass, you get a lot of road dust under here. And it's not really good, healthy. You know, it's not really healthy. All you have to do is give us a big property with a fence around it. We'll tarp off the fence. We'll put campsites in there. We'll police it ourselves. Give us a couple of dumpsters. Give us some porta potties. You got the trash problem dealt with. You got the human waste problem dealt with. We're everywhere. We're all over the place. I don't know what our numbers are right now, but they're growing, and they're growing fast. I mean, I was the only one here on this block 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was all by myself, right here, all by myself. Once you're in the homeless rut, it is hard as hell to get out of it.
The latest count found nearly 30,000 homeless people living in the Bay Area. That's roughly the same number of people who live in the city of Burlingame.
These numbers are calculated from a one-night all-out blitz where thousands of volunteers and homeless advocates hit the streets to count the homeless population. The count happens every 2 years. The most recent count happened in January of this year.
The homeless aren't just spread along urban skid rows, sleeping in alleys and begging for spare change.
Homeless people are, of course, in Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco, but they're also in the suburbs, in small towns, along residential streets, and their numbers are increasing. In East Contra Costa County, for example, the number of people living without permanent housing was up by 33% between 2015 and 2017. Slightly more than half of those people live in the community of Antioch.
The news about homelessness in large cities, sadly, is not promising either. Alameda County's homeless population spiked roughly 40% between the point-in-time counts. Half of that county's homeless live in Oakland.
A possible reason for that? Median rents were up by 25% since 2015. But at the same time, median household incomes were up by just 5%.
Head south to Silicon Valley. In Santa Clara County, homelessness rose 13% over the past 2 years. More shocking was the drastic increase in the number of homeless youth. That number ballooned by a whopping 286%. There are now more than 3,500 homeless young people living in that county.
San Francisco is where homelessness may be the most visible. They have 7,500 people living on the streets. But they're no longer just clustered in the city's downtown area. Some residential neighborhoods saw a drastic jump in those without a home. In the Richmond district, for example, the number of homeless people doubled from 2015 to 2017. Other areas saw a threefold increase.
Those are the numbers, but why are they so extreme in the Bay Area? I sat down with UC Berkeley professor Sam Davis, an expert who's been studying homelessness in the Bay Area for years. And he's currently serving on a board with Berkeley Mayor Jesse Arreguin, looking at ways to address the problem. Professor Davis says when it comes to homeless, affordable housing is our biggest issue.
Housing, that's I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm an architect. It's just, that's the answer. We just need more housing. And we need housing that's befitting of the various populations, as we mentioned, and that they can afford.
I moved here 20 years ago, and I don't remember seeing the homeless encampments, the tent cities that I'm seeing now. I mean, some of them are sprawling now. They're taking up entire city blocks. What's changed or what's creating this? Where are they coming from?
Well, I don't know that they're coming from afar. I think the data show that most of the people that have become homeless were in the county, living in the county before they became homeless. I think in Alameda County that figures 80 or 82% of the people counted last year were already in the county living here before they became homeless.
Are we seeing more families? Are we seeing more different kinds of homeless faces?
Yes, we're definitely seeing more families. We're seeing more families with young children, which is really tragic, but not just for the health issues that surround that, but also for education issues. So yeah, I think the home, if again, I'd have to look back at the data, but I would think that I'm quite sure that the population of homeless families with young children is growing and is a pretty large portion of the overall homeless population.
And if you'd like to hear more of our conversation, the full video is posted on our website at KTVU.com. We've set up a special section on homelessness dedicated to this important issue.
The fact is that all over the Bay Area, there are so many people affected, and some of the most vulnerable are families who are out on the streets.
Every morning we walk about 10 blocks just to get to the bus to take him to school. He shouldn't have to worry about where are we going to stay tonight, you know?
Coming up, we'll have more on this family's incredible journey. Plus, what is it about the Bay Area that some would say lends itself to a growing homeless population? We'll explore the different factors that one former mayor says are definitely part of the problem. Tonight's special on homelessness in the Bay Area continues right after this break.
My son calls me a turtle, you know, because I wear my house on my back. Compass is telling families that if they sleep on the streets or in a vehicle, they'll be able to access shelter faster.
That is the harsh reality. Families learning if they move to the streets, the possibility of permanent housing may come sooner than just getting by in a shelter.
City officials say there are now more than 3,000 homeless children in San Francisco. Many of those kids wind up missing school, lacking proper nutrition, and experiencing exhaustion from sleep loss and stress.
We recently spent a day with one homeless family in San Francisco and saw firsthand the struggles they're facing. KTVU's Tara Moriarty has their story.
It's 6:45 a.m. at the First Friendship Shelter in San Francisco. Families trickle out, including Meadow Sylvester, her husband Aaron Burrows, and their 8-year-old son AJ.
It really seems like to me that poor is the new thing to be prejudiced against.
The three sleep on a mat together, AJ in the middle, in a room filled with about 50 other homeless people.
Many people snore. I hear this pretty much all that.
Every morning, the three pack up and leave at 7 o'clock. That's when all the families are forced out, only allowed back later in the afternoon.
Every morning we walk about 10 blocks just to get to the bus to take him to school.
First stop, a market and Pete's Coffee.
Meadow, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
Thank you. Have a great day.
After dipping into the bank account, Meadow learns they only have $140 left for the rest of the month, and it's only the 12th.
You want some milk or some water to go with that?
Yes, please.
The family lives off Meadow's disability and Aaron's state welfare checks, which total $1,500 a month. The Burrows say a long and drawn-out landlord dispute, coupled with skyrocketing rents, forced them out of their Bayview apartment.
There's a mixture of looks you get, but a lot of it is people just look disgusted.
Aaron suffers from social anxiety disorder. Meadow has spina bifida and PTSD. Both are recovering heroin addicts. Every morning, they wash up in the market restroom.
Come here. The hygienes are right here. This is all our shower stuff.
They only get a shower once a week at the shelter.
Save water.
While Aaron must leave for a doctor appointment,
Bye. Love you too.
Meadow walks 6 more city blocks and catches a bus to AJ's school. AJ is acutely aware of his situation. Lately, he's been having trouble at school. He frequently gets sick and doesn't sleep well at the shelter full of crying babies and snoring adults.
Love you. I'll see you at school.
His teachers say AJ winds up sleeping most days on this cot set up in the school's main office.
Is CPS going to take me away? He's scared for me to leave him at school, that I might not come back.
The family has been trying for 5 months to get into a shelter where they can have their own room and work toward more permanent housing.
Compass is telling families that if they sleep on the streets or in a vehicle, they'll be able to access shelter faster.
There are at least 7,500 homeless people in San Francisco, 3,200 of them children. That's according to the family homelessness program Compass, which says it received calls from 5,200 Bay Area families last year looking for shelter service. And that's only a fraction of the actual number, they say.
It's like I go to these appointments, I fill out these applications, and it's so depressing.
The Burrows lost their Section 8 voucher, so finding a new home on $1,500 a month is nearly impossible.
And the rents range now for like a 2-bedroom. It could be an average of like $4,800. It's really a miracle that families kind of survive the day-to-day grind.
Officials here say the borough's best bet is to find permanent supportive housing where there is on-site support and rent is adjusted based on income.
But the likelihood that she might find a unit in San Francisco is slim.
With no family to help them, they say they'll continue to muddle their way through the system, get jobs, get off the streets, and into a home.
He shouldn't have to worry about where are we going to stay tonight,
If anything, for AJ.
Yes, I made a mistake or whatever, and I've tried to rectify the situation, but I'm just still being punished. My whole family is.
In San Francisco, Tara Moriarty, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
In the past month since we spoke to the family, Aaron, Meadow, and AJ have bought an RV that they're now living in. They tell us it's a way that they can prove to the homeless advocacy group Compass that they're ready to move into permanent housing. We'll keep in touch with them and keep you updated on their journey as well.
Whether it's San Francisco, the East Bay, or in the South Bay, homeless encampments and tent cities are more visible than ever before. And while the problem needs to be addressed, frustrations can boil over.
It's really hard for people who live in neighborhoods where they walk out the door and, there's needles, people don't have a place to go to the bathroom. It's scary for their kids.
And as those encampments, homeless encampments, expand, many business owners say it's impacting their bottom line.
They've taken over everything, and we're concerned about the safety of our employees.
More on that and other issues coming up on this KTVU special, Concern or Crisis.
Well, my wife works right over there, and I come in and catch the BART. And as you come off the freeway, there's just a homeless camp. It's just horrible.
I mean, I've lived in the Bay Area for 30 years, and when people started begging on the street and living on the street and standing in traffic asking for money on the street, I had only seen that in like poor parts of Mexico and other. I'd never seen that in this country.
Ask any of these like average working class people, we should have the right to not have to hurdle over heroin needles. We should have the right to not have to breathe in crack smoke on our commute. And that's the problem that I can't solve.
It's very sad. It's sad because you see not just individuals, you see entire families homeless with not too much hope at all.
As you drive around the Bay Area, it's not hard to find a homeless encampment. Many are expanding as the homeless form their own communities, and in some cases, they stretch for entire blocks.
Crews work to clean up the tent cities, but they seem to just move from block to block. Recently, the city of Oakland took action, cleaning up trash outside of businesses, but pretty much as soon as the trash is gone, it just starts piling up again. City officials have tried to support some encampments, giving them porta potties and barricades to keep the camps from pouring out farther into the streets. Some think doing that is a more humane and healthy option for dealing with the homeless.
A recent UC Berkeley study found that moving the homeless from one space to another may not be cost effective. So what's the answer? It's a problem that faces communities in many cities around the Bay Area. Officials say in March they found more than 100 encampments lining the streets of Oakland.
So why the Bay Area? Why are there so many homeless people here? Is it the weather? Is it our culture? There are some who say that has something to do with it. Former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown talked to us recently on the culture. Here's what he told us.
They are in other locations, and there's no doubt people tell them exactly how much better off you are if you are in need in San Francisco versus some other place. And so they will migrate to San Francisco for that purpose. And we are a very generous city.
It is a complex issue. While some point to the culture here, UC Berkeley professor Sam Davis, who's been studying the homeless problem for years, pointed to several different factors.
I don't actually think the culture is contributing in a major way. I think it's more about economics and about jobs and about mental health support. And I think that it's just been exacerbated by the rising rents and other costs in the Bay Area. And I don't know that there's actually been an explosion. I'd have to look back at the numbers over the last couple of years. I just think it's a lot more visible. I think the encampments is somewhat of a new phenomenon. People did live on the streets, but not aggregated in groups like they seem to have been in the last year or so.
All of the homeless encampments seem to continue getting bigger, and many business owners and employees work next to or right across from these tent cities.
And they have legitimate concerns. KTVU's Frank Malicote talked to people on both sides of the issue.
They are tucked under countless miles of Oakland BART track, tent cities, where a year ago there was one, now dozens have sprung up. Blocks from City Hall, entire street corners have been swallowed up, where laundry, garbage, and commerce now mingle as one. Industrial areas like here in West Oakland have become shanty towns with a flea market flair.
This is bottom. You under a bridge in the tent.
Some are here because of drug use, others are here because of mental illness or finances. Whatever the case, the word is out. Oakland is quickly becoming a refuge for the homeless.
She sleeps here. Man, this is my sleeping bag right here. I just rolled it out.
Iraq War veteran Lee Smith calls his minivan home. It sits under this shroud of tarps on West Oakland's Wood Street. His gritty neighborhood has grown from 60 to nearly 200 plus this past year. Smith is a handyman, says he wants out, but simply can't afford it.
I'm on a fixed income, you know, and the rent went up, and all my check just gone like that without taking care of the bill. So I had to make a choice.
You grew up in Hillsborough and Danville. Did you ever think you'd end up here?
No.
No?
No.
Maven Carter Griffin is a self-described gypsy with an artisan's heart. A divorce and foreclosure pushed this fifth-generation California onto Wood Street 4 years ago, and she's in no hurry to get out.
I see it as a culture. Like I said, I think we're a culture, not a problem. We're evolving, and we're trying really hard to have some dignity and respect and learn how to live amongst each other. It's an experiment. I think it's a curb urban experiment.
An experiment that has some Oakland businesses saying enough already. Ray Mazur owns the Golden West Envelope Company directly across from that Wood Street encampment.
They've taken over everything, and we're concerned about the safety of our employees. We're concerned about what's going to happen to our insurance rates, because everything goes up because of what's going on out here, all the activity. It depreciates the value, but the insurance rates go up. It's just, one big mess.
A mess that has no quick fix. Homelessness isn't just an Oakland problem, it's a Bay Area problem. A problem that will take perhaps a generation to fix.
Somebody comes every day.
New person.
Every day.
Every day.
Basically every day.
For some, like lifelong Oaklander Raymond Joseph, they feel forgotten.
No one actually comes out here and evaluate the situation or see if anybody can, I don't know, do better by, you know what I'm saying, being evaluated or being shown steps to take or contacts to make to do better.
Joseph has called this 980 overpass at West Grand home for 2+ years. A Laney College grad that couldn't get work, and now he dreams of a way out.
I don't want to be homeless, or I don't want to be somebody that actually doesn't, you know, just fit in with mainstream society, you know, because the camp doesn't define me. It's just somewhere to pitch a tent and be.
In Oakland, Frank Malakote, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Around the Bay Area, we're seeing a whole new face of homeless.
In one case, a man who devoted his time to helping the homeless after time on the streets is now back on the streets himself, living in a car.
Initially, he was homeless in the jungle. He fought a good fight for many people, including himself, got into housing. Now he's back on the street. It reflects the problem.
Plus, many experts say the root of the problem is housing, a problem driving people out onto the streets or out of the Bay Area.
I originally lived in the city of Mountain View, and then I got priced out from there, and I moved to the city of Santa Clara, got priced out from there, moved to the city of Sunnyvale, got priced out from there.
Tonight's special, Homeless in the Bay Area, Concern or Crisis? We'll be right back.
Homelessness is a problem not just limited to the Bay Area. In the Pacific Northwest, homelessness in Seattle rose 10% over the past 2 years. During that time, Los Angeles County saw a rise of 23%. There are now nearly 60,000 people living on the streets there.
Homelessness also affects smaller regions as well. In Central Oregon, there are now 30% more people without permanent housing. On the East Coast, Vermont is up almost 20%. And finally, in New York City, the number of homeless people out on the streets was up nearly 40% over the past 2 years.
That being said, across the country overall, the homeless population is down. So why are many of these statistics rising in the Bay Area? When it comes to the issue of homelessness, one thing that can't be ignored is the lack of affordable housing.
And that's especially true here in the Bay Area. With the tech boom and the popularity of the Bay Area, home prices are soaring. KTVU's Tom Vakar takes a closer look now at our housing crisis.
I originally lived in the city of Mountain View, and then I got priced out from there, and I moved to the city of Santa Clara, got priced out from there, moved to the city of Sunnyvale, got priced out from there.
The American dream of home ownership and the California dream of easy living is in a severe drought that's lasted for decades, and there's no economic El Nino to end it.
I had a kindergarten teacher, wonderful teacher, get married in May. They couldn't afford a house here, and so they moved to San Diego. So I lost a really great teacher.
People of color, African Americans, Latinos, we don't see a future here because of the rent increase.
In fact, says Matt Reagan, policy director for the Bay Area Council, a consortium of the Bay Area's biggest employers, we keep falling further and further behind.
In the last decade, we've permitted about 1 new home for every 8 jobs we've created. As a state, California needs to create about 180,000 units of housing a year just to keep pace with natural population growth. We're averaging about 80.
That red-hot competition has skyrocketed prices. About 311,000 California housing units have been built in the past decade. But during that same time, California's population has grown by 3.25 million. 10 times more new people than housing units. The number crunchers at the California Association of Realtors calculate that overall, Bay Area single-family homes are now 8% more expensive than just a year ago, and far, far higher in Santa Clara, Alameda, and San Mateo counties. Today, the median Bay Area home price is about $909,000. That's 64% higher than California's already high statewide average.
When we have significant numbers of working families living in their cars, we have a crisis.
The rent increases that we're seeing now are the highest we've ever seen.
Without even considering the chronically homeless lining streets and freeway underpasses with tent cities, affordable home builder Steve Marshall, founder of Little House on the Trailer, says that has led to many to seek out or create a wide variety of illegal living spaces, from warehouses to garages to rundown RVs to shacks and sheds and backyards.
And they may well comprise 25% of our housing stock.
Marshall says city and county, building, zone, and code enforcement departments know full well that that's going on.
And they generally have a policy, if no one complains, they're grateful that that housing exists.
We know the housing costs are killing people, and it's choking folks, and we got to do more to get housing built.
A scientific statewide poll just last month, commissioned by Advocates for Affordable Housing, shows that the majority of Californians are willing to support as much as $9 billion in housing bonds to build affordable housing. Even if you could get affordable housing units down to $100,000 each, that $9 billion would create just 90,000 units, half of what we need just to keep up with population growth. But that does not include the cost of land, utilities, and many fees communities demand to permit those units.
This delivered house would be 1/3 of the total.
And that is to say nothing of homeowner and citizen resistance, fearing everything from reduced property values to diminution of their quality of life. That reduced San Jose's 99 potential sites for affordable homes down to just 2.
The people that have what they've got, they're happy with the current situation.
People believe that affordable housing, for instance, negatively impacts the value of their home. That's patently false. We know that building affordable housing in communities has no negative impact on home values.
So Tom, even if there is affordable housing, how does that help the chronically homeless?
Well, the chronically homeless have more problems than just needing a place to live. If you simply stick them in a box, many of them are not going to like it there. Many of them are going to leave, and many of them are going to destroy those surroundings. What they need are other kinds of care. They need mental care. They need drug rehabilitation. They need this world of other treatment that needs to be done. And that's going to add at least 25 to 50% more on top of the cost of the housing, no matter how low cost it is.
Yeah, there are just some really tough answers out there that are going to cost a lot of money. Tom, thank you. The housing crisis is something everyone in the Bay Area has to deal with, whether they're homeless or not.
But it's really affecting those on the fringe, those trying to make a difference.
KTVU's Ann Rubin spoke to a man who's devoted his time to advocating for the homeless, but now he's ended up on the streets himself.
Stuff like this is hard to come by, you know, this heavy tarp.
Robert Aguirre spends most of his time advocating for the homeless, either out in the encampments or down at San Jose City Hall.
I provide a bridge. I provide the connection to the people that have the solutions to the people that have the need.
It's something he's been doing for years, but suddenly this summer, Aguirre's circumstances changed when he received a letter from his own landlord.
She served us with an eviction notice. It was a no-cause eviction.
San Jose has since changed the rules about evictions, but for Aguirre, it was too late. After nearly 3 years in that apartment, he was now homeless. A friend lent him this car, and he's been living out of it since July.
Be sleeping under a bridge or on a field or on a sidewalk somewhere.
Aguirre admits he's better equipped to handle this than most. In fact, he was homeless once before, living in the infamous San Jose encampment called the Jungle. It happened after his business as a technology consultant went under, and it was his experience there that made him a passionate advocate.
Initially, he was homeless in the jungle. He fought a good fight for many people, including himself, got into housing. Now he's back on the street. It reflects the problem.
The problem is that Aguirre, like many others, has a Section 8 voucher in hand, but there are long wait lists for any apartment willing to accept them. And so Aguirre has gotten creative, asking the mayor and city council members to write him letters of recommendation, and they did.
When I show up with those letters, it kind of changes the conversation.
Aguirre wants to make it clear he's not looking for special treatment, just an opportunity to rent somewhere. In the meantime, he says he'll keep fighting for the homeless like he always has.
You'd have to shoot me to stop me. I can't stop.
While Aguirre hunts for a new apartment, he says he'll continue to advocate for other projects like the tiny homes proposal in San Jose that might help others besides just himself. In San Jose, Ann Rubin, KTVU Fox 2 News.
For some people, waiting for a place to rent isn't an option. KTVU reporter Amber Lee met with the Mandolf family last month in Oakland. They were living out of their car while they looked for a place to rent with their 3 children. They ended up homeless when their mother, Aisha, got sick after giving birth to their youngest child. With a limited income and skyrocketing housing prices, the Mandolfs decided they had no choice but to leave Oakland and move to Las Vegas, where they could find an apartment for half the price.
I don't ever want to feel like this again. I'm going to make a point of making better plans for our future.
The Mandolfs were able to find an apartment and pay for an entire year's worth of rent thanks to a lot of generous contributions to a GoFundMe account. And last week we checked in with them over Skype, and Aisha tells us that her family is doing great, especially her kids.
They're excited, adjusting to new schools, the baby's running around and, just having a great time.
What's the best part of all of this? We saw the piece that Amber did where you were sleeping in your car, you were washing in sinks and bathrooms. It just looked like it was really tough. Contrast that to what it's like now.
Wow. I can't even say, their words don't even explain how much we tend to take for granted when you don't have the simple things in life. The ability to walk to the refrigerator and grab a bite to eat or cook dinner. I'm so excited. I've cooked dinner every single night.
Aisha says being homeless was one of the most difficult things she's ever faced, and she says she'll never look at the homeless the same way.
Still ahead, they serve their country, and many are living on the streets. The search to find the Bay Area's homeless veterans.
Are you a veteran in need of services? We're looking for veterans. Any veterans? Hello, anyone home?
We go along with the Gulf War veteran as he goes tent by tent searching for homeless vets. Many of the chronic cases of homeless are people with mental illness. It's a healthcare issue that needs near constant treatment to help people.
Mental illness, different from any other kind of illness, it's the illness itself that prevents people or can prevent people from knowing that they have something that could benefit from help and treatment and then doing something about it.
San Francisco General recently opened a facility for those transitioning from the hospital to the outside world, working to ensure they don't end up on the streets.
Some of them will be able to spend the night, but we'll be doing medicine management, medication management, psychiatric support, addiction support, and it will be a day treatment program along with overnight stays.
Mayor Ed Lee and other city leaders toured the facility in late August. It's called the Hummingbird Navigation Center and will cost nearly $3 million a year to operate. Many of the nation's veterans are dealing with mental health issues. After serving our country, many develop post-traumatic stress disorder.
And unfortunately, some of those vets end up on our streets. This week, KTVU's Rob Ross spent time with some homeless veterans and other former service members who are hoping to help them.
Lawrence Rosenberg says he doesn't like talking about his days as a Marine fighting in the Vietnam War in the late 60s.
Freaks me out. It always did freak me out. It still will freak me out till the day I die.
We found Rosenberg recently in San Francisco's Tenderloin, but he says for most of the past 14 months he's been sleeping outside on Haight Street.
It sucks. It's kicking my butt. I mean, I'm tired of getting beat up, tired of getting robbed.
Rosenberg says sometimes he can't believe he was caught in an ever downward spiral that took him from the military to the streets. He gets emotional.
I served my flag. I did mine. And yes, big boys cry. Big boys cry. You don't cry, man. You ain't got no heart.
Rosenberg is one of 137 chronically homeless veterans in San Francisco, according to the latest homeless census. There are some 400 other vets considered homeless, but not living on the streets. That's a decrease from 2 years ago in San Francisco.
Are you a veteran in need of services?
Each day, Gulf War veteran Ben Bencomo goes tent by tent searching for homeless vets.
We're looking for veterans. Any veterans? Hello, anyone home?
Bencomo is an outreach worker for Swords to Plowshares, which works to get those who serve the military off the streets. He says many of them have given up.
While you're in the service, you have a sense of purpose, you have a dignity about what you're doing,
And then to lose all that for whatever reason on the streets, it's a real crash and burn situation. How long have you been homeless on the streets?
Like this time, like 14 months.
But on this day, Ben Como and Lawrence Rosenberg met for the first time.
If you sign right there, that's the first permission slip.
Swords to Plowshares tells us that with the help of the city, Rosenberg now has a case manager and should be getting a permanent place to live this month.
A lot of the work is convincing that we can help them. It's available to them. We encourage them to make the choice to let us work with them. We always give the vets the choice. And sometimes that's hard because they may not make the choices that we would like to see them make.
This former Marine appears to have made the right choice after years of heroin addiction and homelessness.
When I wasn't high, that's when it really affected me about why am I doing this.
He now lives in a federally subsidized studio apartment in a building on Kearney Street for formerly homeless vets.
This is heaven, man. I just have an attitude of gratitude.
At Swords to Plowshares,
the cost of war doesn't end after the battlefield, as we well know. The costs continue.
Executive Director Michael Blecker says public attitudes toward veterans have improved since he came home after serving in Vietnam.
The good news is that you can see some tangible results from the investments of HUD and the public sector have made. The bad news is, will those investments continue and increase? And that's what we need.
A place to live is what 81-year-old homeless Vietnam vet Michael Boutwell needs. The former Army Staff Sergeant says he now sleeps along the Embarcadero.
How are you going to get out of this mess?
I don't know. Probably die. I don't know. Really don't.
In San Francisco, Rob Roth, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Seeing homeless on the streets of San Francisco is nothing new, but what is new are the large growing encampments. That's something we haven't seen before.
They're picking up anywhere from 2 to 4 tons of garbage a day just from these encampments.
Coming up on this KTVU special report, the growing frustration facing city workers in San Francisco and what they're doing to try to get the problem under control.
A recent head count in San Francisco revealed about 7,500 people have no place to call home. And every night, about 60% of those are left to fend for themselves out on the streets. That's 4,500 people every single night sleeping out in the cold.
Last year, San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee created the Department of Homelessness to tackle the problem. KTVU's Tara Moriarty talked with the director who's working to find long-term solutions.
Tara also spoke to the head of Public Works, who's working on short-term solutions, and she spoke with a supervisor who says right now the city just isn't doing enough.
High five. Mark Sino has been living on the streets of San Francisco for 7 years.
Suddenly I no longer had a place to stay, so I bounced around as I could and ended up out here.
Originally from Antioch, the 36-year-old lost his job following a work injury. He also suffers from PTSD.
You kind of get the fishbowl syndrome because you never really get any time away or time to decompress without people always watching you or calling the cops on you.
Today, Sino is upset because he's losing all of his stuff. Public Works crews are doing a sweep. They're clearing out this homeless encampment, hosing away urine and feces and tossing out trash.
They're picking up anywhere from 2 to 4 tons of garbage a day just from these encampments.
Meet Mohammed Nuru, the head of the Public Works Department. He sees the dirty side of homelessness.
They don't have bathrooms. They don't, they poop, they pee, right outside their tent.
And then there's the needles. Nuru's crews can pick upwards of 17,500 needles in just 1 month. It's a job that can not only be hazardous, but downright dangerous.
We've had quite a number of assaults to our workers on a very regular basis.
Some call his teams janitors for the city's homeless.
So, as we say in Public Works, maid service.
Nuru says homeless encampments seemed to spike when San Francisco hosted the Super Bowl in 2016.
Right after the Super Bowl, we started seeing more tents.
And with the city's building boom, especially in the south of Market area and Mission Bay, homeless were getting forced out, only to crop up in other neighborhoods.
There was nothing here 3 months ago, and it's been a problem. And I really don't know why this is acceptable. I mean, we have an encampment, and I've asked the Department of Homelessness that we don't have encampments in my district. Yet nothing seems to happen. And
Jeff Sheehy oversees District 8, including Glen Park, Noe Valley, and the Castro.
When I see my district suddenly getting worse because of what's going on in the Mission, or because they're cleaning up Civic Center and people just get on Muni and come here, or they get on BART and come to Glen Park, that's not helping.
Sheehy says the city needs to be more aggressive.
We've called outreach teams here. The outreach teams have come and talked to people, and the people have refused services. Then the outreach teams just walk away. There's not a solution. We flush money down the tube when we're paying people to interact with people and not solve the problem.
This problem was 40 years in the making.
Jeff Kazitsky spearheads the city's new Department of Homelessness.
These are people. This is somebody's son and somebody's daughter, and when they were young, they didn't grow up wanting to be living on the streets.
Kazitsky says America's homeless crisis has been brewing for decades.
You know, in 1944, FDR talked about housing as a right for all Americans, but by 1978, we started to dismantle the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and if you took it in real dollars, it's sort of the equivalent of an 80% cut in the HUD budget from 1978 to today.
But San Francisco is spending money on the homeless, last fiscal year to the tune of $258 million. Some even complain that San Francisco is too generous. For example, remember Sino? He's not even from San Francisco.
Why not try to go to Antioch and get housing?
They don't even have shelters or anything out there, and their wait list is just as long as out here for any sort of subsidized housing.
But Kazitsky says if you don't spend money on the homeless now, you'll pay more for it later.
I can tell you, for somebody who's chronically homeless and living on the streets, it can cost $50, $80, even $100,000 a year in medical costs, trips to the hospital.
He believes a universal housing subsidy is key. And for those homeless who refuse services,
then need to be asked to move out of the city, frankly.
Unfortunately, once your life gets this bad, it's really hard to salvage it. And then once you get out on the street, it's really, really hard to get back indoors.
In San Francisco, Tara Moriarty, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Many people are frustrated, not just in San Francisco, but all across the Bay Area. And they want to know what city leaders are doing to solve the homeless problem.
I feel like nothing's being done. And I hate to say that. I'm sure that, there's people who are probably going to argue with that, but there's nothing being done. And as a result, the homelessness keeps growing.
I just think it's so unfair. There are so many families out there that are going through homelessness, that are spending, 50 to 60 to even up to 75% of their income on rent.
We've got to keep talking about it. I mean, I understand how people just wind up stepping over somebody and just going to work because you wind up wondering how big a difference can I make? But I feel like we can't give up.
And keep talking about it, we will. All this week, we'll be bringing you more stories focused on homeless issues facing the Bay Area.
And next Sunday night, we'll be right back here talking about possible solutions. Join us for a live KTVU special at 9 p.m. We'll be joined by the leaders of our local communities asking what's being done to get people off the streets. That's next Sunday night live at 9 p.m.
The 10 o'clock news is next right here on KTVU. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you have a good night, everyone. See you later.